Pat yourself on the back because you are right here, right now for a reason. Welcome to the On Purpose podcast, where together we will empower ourselves and others to live lives with more passion and purpose. How you doing this morning, Jared?
I am fantastic, Ollie. I'm excited to be here with you, my friend. We are a little over a week away from our workshop. I am so excited to meet with our On Purpose community in person and to help them really get a kickstart into 2020. And that's kind of one of the things that's been on my mind is early October now. And so many people I know are kind of mailing in the rest of 2019, right? They didn't accomplish things they wanted. They didn't get things done. And they're like, in 2020. And I'm like, no way, dude. We start right now.
Yeah.
We'll be 3 months ahead of everybody by 2020. And that workshop, dude, I'm so excited to have you there with me and to really take this thing to the next level.
Yep. Game time. Fourth quarter right now. And I'm just excited to help empower everyone as I am to empower myself. I'm excited for my blueprint that I'm going to leave with and excited to get my 2020 going. So it's going to be a great event Saturday, October 19th at the Innisphere building. There's only just a couple spots left. I'm really surprised because honestly, sometimes I wait till the last minute to register for stuff. So I'm really, really grateful that we have this entire event almost full. So if you're not registered yet, get on it because I am very confident that it's going to be full in the next couple of days.
And I think that is a testimony to what you've brought, what we've created, and the intention of our community is that they are aware of wanting more in their life and they're not afraid to get out and get after it. So yeah, they registered early. It's so humbling to know that people trust you to help make them better. And I tell you, I couldn't be more grateful. And then on our end, we got to have that responsibility to step up and make sure we get people where they want to be. So I love both sides of it.
Yeah, mutually beneficial for sure. Just like our purposeful practice, I always think, man, I always get something out of reading listener submissions. So thank you, all of you who are consistently putting those in, because reading what you guys are going through and how you're overcoming a lack of purpose and a lack of passion really helps me become more passionate and purposeful. So reviewing last week's episode, Overcoming Resentfulness, what are some takeaways you did in your practice, Jared?
Just being more mindful to really take whatever lesson I'm supposed to learn from a situation and not harbor it and carry it against somebody, but learn from it and move forward. And I think that truly to me is, like I said in that episode, very freeing and light. It keeps me light. If I'm carrying around negativity from things that I wished hadn't happened or I wished would have been different, it just doesn't serve me well.
Yeah.
How about you?
Yeah, for me, in my purposeful practice, I really reflected and decided that for me, for my life, forgiveness is always the best route, and that it's for me. It's not for the other person. However, that I can't be too quick to forgive sometimes if I don't process the emotions. If I try to just be autopilot default forgiveness without actually processing. Sometimes there needs to be a little bit of anger and resentment that you work through before being like, all right, I'm ready to forgive.
Yeah.
And I also realized too that forgiveness doesn't always necessarily mean letting the other person know or even needing to move forward with a relationship with the person.
Sure.
So those are the big takeaways.
And I think the key is, and if you haven't listened to that episode, get back to it, listen to it. But the key thing is, you said process. We didn't get stuck in one stage or another. We didn't get stuck in anger. We didn't get stuck in feeling bad for ourselves. We went through all of it, and that's normal. But then on the flip side, we got to deal with it and move forward. So, yeah, I love it. And it's amazing to me how many people are coming to us for the podcast and talking about how different we are and the fact that we do give practice at the end of it. And we try to inspire people to actually not just listen for entertainment or to get through 45 minutes, but to really listen, put it in your life and see how does this apply to you. And that's what separates us. There's so many podcasts out there, and we're different. We know we're different. We choose to be different, and we're so thankful for all of you guys that are embracing that difference and really creating a community that is going to make the world a better place. And I know that's idealistic, and some of my friends will be like, oh, you blah, blah. And I'm like, no, dude, that's what we're doing. If we make one person's day better, the world is better. And if each of us make another person's day better, the world is better. And that's what we're doing. And I make no bones about it. Like, we have big goals for this. We have big dreams for this. And it is to bring more purpose to people's lives, which to me then also brings happiness.
Amen.
Who doesn't want more happy people walking around the streets?
Yeah, that's what I want. It's the compound effect. Well, I'm excited about today's episode titled, Are You Afraid of Greatness? Greatness is a topic that I love, considering my name is Ali, one of the most famous Alis. He used to call himself the greatest. So I love the term greatness, and I'm excited to reflect on this.
Yes, I want you to, why don't you kick it off for us this week, Ali? What do you see as greatness? Like, how do you define greatness, or what do you think of when you hear the term greatness?
Greatness to me has this divinity to the word, right? When you think of something great, you think of something godly, something divine. And I think of how we all have divinity within, and how we all are born with the capacity to be great. No matter who you are, no matter how you're born, what race, color, religion, how your body is, whether you have any defects, any sickness, illness, anything, any human being, I truly, truly believe has the capacity to be great. And exercising greatness, in my opinion, is manifesting what you intend to manifest. Is going out there and achieving what you want to achieve. But also, being great is knowing when to pivot and shift, because sometimes the universe, sometimes that greater divinity, no matter how hard we try and achieve something, it may not be meant for us. So I think that greatness is manifesting with awareness.
Interesting.
Yeah.
So that's interesting. So you don't think it's an actual skill? Is it an actual talent you have, or you believe everybody has it?
I believe everyone has it, but it does need to be honed.
Yeah.
Everyone is born with the capacity for greatness, but it needs to be. That's a good question. I don't know if I would call it a skill. But
Yes.
I see what you're saying.
See, I do think it's a skill.
Okay.
And here's why. If you ask me, what do I define greatness as? I literally see greatness as just seeing what's possible within you, period. Right? Because I think too many times people see greatness as LeBron James or this celebrity, and I can never be them because I'm not 6'9" and I can't dribble a basketball, or blah, 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 blah. But we all have something, just like you said, we all have something that's great within us. What separates those who play in their greatness and those who die with the greatness kept to themselves is the ability to utilize it. Some people don't know what they're great at because they get so stuck in being all the different roles for other people or not believing in themselves that they never tap their greatness. Others know what their greatness is, but they won't let it out for fear of judgment and all the other stuff we'll go through on this episode. But I truly think it's a skill to identify what is my greatness, and then it's overcoming that fear to share it with the world. You know what I mean?
Yeah, that's
and
interesting
because I
way to
agree
look
with
at
you,
it.
like we all have divine greatness. Everybody's great at something. Now, can you be great on the macro level to the entire world? Maybe not. Like we may not all catch the break that makes us go viral. We may not all catch the breaks that puts us out to the world. But why shouldn't we be great on the macro or the micro?
Yeah.
Right? Why can't we be great to the 2 people that do listen to us? Why can't we be great to the 4 or 5 people in our family?
Well, we can.
For sure we can, but we got to recognize it.
Yeah. And that's the first step of being great on the macro level, is being great on the micro
You
level.
can't get to one without, you're right, you can't get great on the big scale unless you're practicing greatness on your small scale. So I firmly believe everybody has greatness in them. It's just their ability to recognize it and then their ability to be willing to share it.
Gotcha. What do you think that you're great at? What is the greatness within you?
That's so funny. Preparing for this, I thought about that question, and here's the best answer I have for what am I great at? I am great at believing I'm great, believing that I can be different, believing that I have talents and I'm willing to throw it out there. And then I'm also great at believing I'm terrible, so that I then reflect, learn, make adjustments, and continue to grow. So it's kind of weird. Like, I feel like I'm in that middle. Like, I believe I'm great, but I also believe I'm not great. So I'd say my greatness is probably that balance. I know that's kind of a weird answer, but it's truly like when I was thinking about, like, what am I great at? Like, I'm not really, I can't tell you just one skill, like one thing, like this is my thing. And if I do this, I'm always good. Like, I truly believe, even like that keynote you came and watched. And thank you for coming to that, by the way. I love getting outside and just sharing, like, on purpose is all over, not just a podcast once a week.
Yeah, that was a fun event.
But people liked it.
Yeah.
Right? And people were like, oh, it was good. And in my head, I was like, that was terrible. I got to fix this, and this. So like, I'm great at stepping out and sharing it, but then I also think I'm really good at analyzing and making adjustments. So I think probably my greatness is balancing between the two.
Yeah.
What about you?
Well, before I jump into mine, I'm kind of reflecting on what you said, and I think your greatness comes in identifying areas where people may need some help. Coaching. I think that's coaching. I think you're really great at doing that and seeing it with just how people interact, in a class, in a group. I mean, that's why you approached me.
Yeah.
And that was identifying the greatness within me,
For
right?
sure.
Of you being like, hey, I want this dude on my podcast, just because, to where I was kind of blindsided when you approached me for the On Purpose podcast, because I didn't know that you were using your greatness and observing.
Yeah.
Right. So something to reflect on is what kind of some greatness I've seen in you is being able to identify the needs and also identify greatness in others of really being able to see what people have to offer.
I appreciate that. And that's, it's interesting. And I think that's truly where I would go with the greatness thing. If you have to walk around and tell people what you're great at, I'd argue you're probably not really good.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, I will never tell you what I'm great at. Like, oh, I'm great at this. And no, you know what? If you're really good at something, you should be demonstrating it.
Right.
And showing it and earning it, and let other people decide that.
Yeah.
But I do believe it's 100% okay to not want to be average, to not want to be in the I just want to be like everybody else and ride through this life invisible. No, I want to be great. But then I also want to balance that out and know that I can always improve.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, even though you just said great people don't say what they're great at, I'm going to take a moment and let you guys know what I am great at. And it's also because people have let me know, and I've gotten a lot of feedback and self-awareness, and I do exercise it daily. And similar to you in a sense, a lot of this skill has been honed through having a very different family, multicultural, multiracial, and being in very different environments from upper middle class to low class. And my greatness is be able to connection with people, connect with all different people from walks of life, and be able to inspire and encourage and motivate, and even love in some capacity. I've gotten a lot better at exuding love to others and really having a connection with people. I think is my greatness. So I think that's a big part of wanting to leave a massively positive impact on the world, because I believe that I can. I believe that I've exercised my greatness enough to be able to do that. Mm-hmm. And I think that partnering people like you, like we can bridge the gap of generations, because there's so much change today to where the way that you grew up and things that you identify with is so different than from what I did. And it may be the way that you say something that will click in someone's brain versus how I say it that will click in someone's brain. But I think that just continuously executing and trying to put it out there is a piece of my greatness that I want to inspire and build others up.
Yeah, and you do a fantastic job of building community and really expressing yourself through your gratitude practice. So let me ask you this then, Ali. You've kind of what you want to do with your greatness and building community. Were you ever afraid to let your greatness out? Were you ever afraid to be you?
Oh yeah, I'm still afraid.
What are you afraid of?
Yeah, still afraid. I still have fear of judgment sometimes. You know,
Yeah.
obviously I've worked through that a lot, and now it's, even if I do feel the fear just a little bit, I move past it. I recognize that fear. I know that fear. But yeah, of course, I've definitely been afraid, and it's been something that I've had to work through.
So so I would consider those like limiting beliefs, right? We all have limiting beliefs. Don't let anybody fool you. We all have doubts. We all have insecurities. We're all afraid of being judged. We're all afraid of failure to some degree. What truly separates people is their willingness to execute despite those feelings versus being paralyzed by them. So I'd like to know, and I think this is awesome for our community here, when you're doubtful, when you're afraid, what is playing in your head? What voices are you hearing? What statements is it that you have to deal with before you push forward? Is there any one thing that's a constant theme for you, or does it vary from time to time?
It's pretty constant now, and it's my voice, my internal voice. And when I feel that fear, typically it's, you got to go, do it.
But what's the fear
You're gonna
telling
grow.
you? Like you're not good enough, you can't do it, you're gonna fail. Like what is it tell? What is the message that it's sending?
Nowadays mainly it's like it's kind of a deep breath. Like, all right, you're putting yourself out there. You're doing something, and it's funny because when I experience fear, now that I'm thinking about it, I'm typically smiling. Because I know that it's a growth opportunity. And I know that it's going to make me better, whatever it is. And I'm trying to think of different examples of fear. And most of them, I keep coming back to this like kind of cheesy grin of like, oh shit, I'm about to do this. It's
Yeah.
kind of my response now to fearful things.
And that response comes from practice because you've done it. You face it so much. And I think that's where our listeners really have to have a takeaway is we all have fears. We all are worried about putting our greatness out there because it may be judged wrong. Somebody may have a negative comment. People may not like it. We may fall flat on our face. Everybody faces those.
Yeah. I
But
do have
the
another example
more
real
you
quick.
go through it, the better you get at handling it.
With actually having fear when I feel like I'm in danger, just popped into my head when I was stuck in Lebanon in, what was it? Like 2006. And my cousins and I were visiting from the U.S. and a war broke out from Israel. They bombed the airport 3 days before we were supposed to leave.
Oh, wow.
I remember we were outside on my parents or on my grandparents' balcony. We were all eating out there, and we just hear and like the table shaking, and my grandmother gets up. My uncle, he's like 55 years old, jumps over the table, heads inside, and my father isn't there, right? That's who I would look up to for guidance. So I just kind of stayed there, and I'm looking at my grandfather, and he's just like looking around, pulls out his pack of Marlboro Reds, lights a cigarette, and I'm just like, Jiddo, Grandpa, what's going on? He's like, looks like a war has started. And I'm just like, dude, so should we run aside? Like, what's going on? But I remember in that when fear arises because I truly feel that I'm in danger, it's a different response than when it's like, all right, I'm going to go give a speech to, 50 people or whatever it is. That type of fear, my response now is trust and faith that everything will be okay. And I have more of a spiritual response when I'm in danger. So I just kind of wanted to share that.
Yeah, I love that. But here's where I will say something. I think, where does that fear come from? Where does fear of being who we're supposed to be come from? And a lot of it comes from something you hit on, right? As humans, we are designed to be afraid of different things so that we survive as a species, right? You've heard of flight or fight for generations, right? And it came back from our very primitive state where we had to decide, do we fight here or do we run? Because the survival of the species depended on us living. But as we've gotten into more modern times, a much safer world, very few people are going to face what you just said, where they're sitting there and all of a sudden they're getting bombed. Mm-hmm. So when we're safe, our mind, though, is still conditioned to look for fear, look for danger. Oh, my God, what should I do? What shouldn't I do? And a lot of times, because we're not actually faced with it every day to where we get to get it out of our system, we internalize it. We find reasons to be afraid of the things we shouldn't be afraid of. Being afraid of being great, for example. Being afraid of giving that public speech when what's the reality is? You don't give a good speech. You don't die. Your family still loves you. You still have a house. You still go home. But we get paralyzed by this. We get paralyzed to not raise our hand when we know the question in class for fear of judgment from everybody else. We hide our greatness.
That's a good one.
Because we're being afraid of all the what if. And guess what? What if you're great? What if you take a risk and you're really freaking good at this? Or what if you're marginally good at it? Maybe you're not even very good in your eyes, but that one person that you touched, you were great to them. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? We all have greatness. We just have got to get past the beliefs that keep it in us. Mm-hmm. Giving that keynote speech on Saturday, I was nervous. I was fearful. There was part of me that didn't want to do it. The timing was off. The show was late. My space was limited. It did not fit how I like to speak. But I made a commitment. So I deal with those fears. I go up there. I learn from it. Right? But if I don't ever even go out there, I don't get to learn those lessons.
Yeah. And look at your greatness coming in and challenging yourself, right? It was a fantastic speech, 17 minutes, well organized, dressed to the T, 3-piece suit, you
told me to
good.
Wear it.
Yeah, I was like, oh, you're the keynote, bro. You got to go to the T, dress the nines. But it was a fantastic speech. I mean, you got great feedback, a lot of people, but to you, you're like, I could have done a lot better.
For sure.
Could have done a lot better, and that's greatness.
I think that's where I lie. I'm pretty well balanced there, but I don't even get to find that out because I'll be honest with you, if you'd known me many years ago, I'd have never given that speech. I'd have never put myself out there because I was comfortable being invisible. Mm-hmm. I was comfortable being invisible. I wished people wouldn't see me. Yeah. And I think for most of us, there's a stage in our life where we hit our greatness. And for me, it was middle school. Being one of the only white kids in a predominantly African-American school. I've told this story on a few other episodes. You know, I got in a lot of fights. We didn't call it bullying back then, but I think today it would fit bullying terms. I was just different. I was the only white kid in a lot of my classes. It was a very, very rough inner city area, so it was unfamiliar to me. So I can tell you there were many days that I would pray before bed that I could just wake up and be black the next day, that my skin would just be a little bit darker so that I didn't have to deal with this every day. And man, that was a time in my life I just wanted to disappear. Mm-hmm. I didn't want anybody to see me. I would not talk. If you'd see me now and we could go back and see like 7th grade me, 8th grade me, you would not believe that what I could become. I had no confidence, no self-esteem. I didn't speak. I did minimal. I would intentionally not do my schoolwork because I didn't want to get an A and be the only kid in the class that got an A. Mm. So I would literally sabotage myself to get straight C's.
Mm-hmm. And look at that. You were limiting your greatness there. And that's what we tend to do, especially in groups, to conform, right? Yep. So these children, that they were easily able to group together and use race as a barrier, right? So all the black kids were a group, and then you're the only white kid. Yep. So they would group together and you're limiting your greatness to be a part of the group, right?
Right.
You even wished you were a little black. You didn't want to get an A.
Right.
And same thing with them. I'm sure there was a lot of kids who were like, why are we picking on the white kid? Like,
Yeah.
but they didn't want to limit their greatness by
Stepping out
they
of the
limited their greatness by
Yeah.
not stepping out, because we tend to be in these groups, right? Same thing when I was in a fraternity. One of the only brown dudes in Texas Tech, Lubbock, Texas, West Texas frat life. I mean, I experienced quite a bit of racism during that, and even me, I didn't make a push for really who I was or my culture, and I conformed, and I wore the damn whitewash Wranglers. I remember I was like, am I about to fucking buy a pair of Wranglers? And now I'll admit, like, I kind of got a little cowboy in my wardrobe now.
Right.
But I remember then it wasn't really who I was, and I conformed, and I really limited myself being great because of fear of what my communities would think, when that's the complete opposite. We need to have communities like our On Purpose community that are pushing us to be great in our own way, no matter what that means.
And the interesting thing is, when you limit your greatness to not stand out and to try to fit in and just try to be like everybody else, most of the times you're still not. Mm-hmm. Like, no matter what I did in that scenario to limit standing out, I still stood out. Mm-hmm. So I could have stood out for being great and really excelling, but instead I tried to disappear, so then I stood out for disappearing. Right? So when you limit your greatness, it doesn't benefit you, and it doesn't benefit those around you, because like you said, maybe there was somebody in that group that would have reached out to me. Maybe there was somebody in that group I was supposed to have a good friendship with, or that wanted to change the way they viewed race, or any of that. But because I never even made an effort, I just tried to hide all the time, we never even got a shot at it.
Yeah. So you obviously that was a very powerful experience and period for you, being at that school that plays a big role into forming who you were as a young man, and, growing off of that foundation. How about today, or even in recent years, how do you limit your greatness, if at all, now? And I'm sure in some ways you must.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, no, I would say there were times, when I was a policeman, that I knew I should be moving on, that I knew I wasn't fulfilling who I was supposed to be. But I got lured into the safety and security of a guaranteed paycheck, health benefits, a job that I was good at without having to put a lot of effort into, to be perfectly honest. And I kind of settled. I started settling for, you work, you have a house, you have kids, you have a car, you have security, and you just should be happy with that, right? That whole mindset of just be happy you have a job. You don't want more, just be thankful you're working. Well, I fell into that. And I felt empty inside, and I felt like, gosh, I know, like, this can't be all my life is supposed to be. I'm supposed to just do this for 30 or 40 years, and then I'll have 10 or 15 years on the backside to enjoy life, and then I'm gonna die. Like, I can't have, like, this can't be all my life is. And I just decided I needed to start seeking more. Like, what was I truly supposed to be doing here? So yeah, I mean, I would say that was like the majority of my 30s were just spent, I would say, existing, not really thriving, not really growing, but merely just doing what I thought I was supposed to be doing, which was what everybody else was doing. And at the whole time, I always knew I was supposed to be different. I always knew I was supposed to be doing different things, but I just wasn't, and I think, like you hit on earlier, the people I was around, that I spent all my time with, they weren't doing it. So it's kind of like contagious, right? Like, if everybody's just going through the motions and nobody's really growing, well, then it becomes okay for you not to grow, because you don't realize you're not growing. Like, you're like, oh, I'm just like everybody else.
Yeah.
But then you get into different circles, you put yourself out there, and like, wait a second, this dude's my age, and he's off climbing these mountains and pulling his kids out of school to take them around the world, and he's living a complete, wait a second, is that possible?
Yeah, it's crazy
And then
how
starts
that
to plant the
happens.
seeds like, okay, maybe maybe my greatness is still there.
Mm.
And we're at a time now where, as much as people bash social media and technology, I can actually pull up videos of people my age that have decided to switch careers and go be great. So now it becomes possible.
Yeah.
And I think that's a huge thing for me is that period of time I got myself surrounded by some different people, and I was like, wait a second, I'm going through the motions. I'm not ready to close the book on my life and say, this is what Jared was. He got this police job. He raised his family. That's the end of the story. Like, no, there's got to be more to share afterwards.
Mm-hmm.
You know?
Yeah. Yeah, that's powerful. It's amazing how surrounding yourself with people who are exercising greatness makes you greater. I've recently met an awesome, really intelligent woman who lives in an intentional community. She's opened a school in Africa. She's a teacher. I actually need to tell you about her bully free program. Pretty genius. Anyway, she's doing huge things in the world, and I visited her at her place, and her upstairs is a whole like space for her yoga, for her meditation. It's like a spirituality room.
Yeah.
And she doesn't have a TV in her living room. It's like in her closet. And I've had a very close friend of mine he recently moved up to Colorado, living in my living room. And I have a TV in there and a couch and, standard kind of living room. And I've recently been so inspired by her. It's actually last night. Took down my TV, I put it in my room, and I was like, you know what, my living room, my living space, I want to emulate what she did because I felt so good being in her space. She's a yoga instructor, was showing me some yoga, did some meditation. She got this incense candle. She has this other little area, and I was like, damn, like that, structuring that, and her journals are up there, like that's her space.
Yeah.
And I was like, man, that's she exercises in that space, not only physically but mentally, spiritually, and I was inspired. And we've only been hanging out for about 2 months, and I was like, man, that's really cool to be inspired. And frankly, I'm not easily inspired because
Sure.
I feel like in most of my communities I'm doing a lot. I'm giving a lot and doing a lot, but it was really nice to be inspired by that. And like I said, last night I took the TV down and get some more things to lay down and make my living room more specific to how I want to live.
Yeah, which is, I think, is kind of how that story ties in, is the fact that sitting on a couch watching a television doesn't lead you to your greatness.
Mm-hmm.
Right? It's mindful or mindless entertainment. Whereas no television, journaling, yoga, whatever you're going to do allows you to feel like you're taking a step towards being great.
Yeah.
And truly like living that great piece of you, not hiding from it.
Right.
Right. And let's be honest. I mean, if people are hiding from their greatness, what does that look like? When I think of people that hide from their greatness, they watch a ton of television. They engage in a ton of other activities, whatever it is that distracts them from the fact that they're not putting it out there. And, your story, I think, is fantastic. It's very similar to how I live. I know when I wake up early and I meditate and I journal and I drink my coffee and just sit and look at the world around me and take a moment to be thankful, I'm living my greatness.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas if I get up and I immediately jump on email and I don't take the time to allow myself to come alive, then I'm hurting myself, right? And I'm kind of hiding from my greatness by task.
Yeah.
And I think that's what you're talking about there is clearing that space in your living room allows you now space to be at home and be like, yep, I'm stepping into my greatness.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm excited. You have to come over when I got it all done.
Yeah, for sure.
Get some good meditation in.
Yeah, I love it.
I have a question.
Yeah.
Before we wrap things up here is, do you have a recent, or I guess it doesn't have to be recent, but share with us a story of when you felt so great, maybe one of your greatest moments in life, and why do you think it felt so great?
That's interesting. The greatest moments of my life, honestly, having my children is a great moment in life because that is literally a human life that is in your hands, and you get to help shape who they're going to become, what they believe they can become, the world they're going to inherit, the world they're going to create. Is probably one of the most humbling and daunting things another human can do, is to know you're responsible for teaching another human all the things you want to learn. So that was definitely one of the greatest moments. But if I had to pick an instance where I was like, yeah, I'm doing something that's special for people, it would probably be my first MMA fight, to be honest. Because I took that fight to challenge myself. I'd competed in team sports my whole life. I'd never done individual sports, and I loved the UFC and I loved fighting, and I wanted to see if I could do it. And there was a moment. I'm sorry. Up to that fight, I wrote a journal. I started journaling then to handle my fears, and I shared it. I emailed it to people, and I shared it on Facebook, and I was blown away at how many people wanted to be part of the journey. How many people were like, "Wow, at 42, you're doing this. I got to get in shape," right? And it inspired people, which was awesome. But there was a very, very special moment right before the fight, and Trey had been wrestling his whole life, and I always walked with him to the mat, and I coached him, and it was always a good moment for us. And so I was like, okay, well, you're gonna walk me to the cage, right? And that's our moment. So our music comes out, and he comes out, and there's 5,000 people here, and he's probably 12, so he was little for his age then. And I just remember like watching him and hearing that roar of the crowd and our music and seeing him like come to life and realizing like when you put yourself out there, you will attract others that want to do it. And maybe they can't do exactly what you're doing, but they can be part of it. And maybe they take a little piece of yours and it makes a little spot of their life better. And we do the walk and we get to the cage where, you take off all your shirts and stuff and they're putting your Vaseline on. You're allowed to hug your cornerman one more time. And then once the inspector takes you, you got to go in the cage. Nobody can touch you. And Trey's standing right there. And I'll never forget Ryan Schultz, man. What an amazing dude he is. He's looking me in the eye, and he's, Schultz is a tough dude. And he's telling me what I need to do, and he's putting Vaseline on. And I look over, Trey's just to our right, and I look down at Trey, and he's got these giant tears coming down his face. I still get emotional talking about this. And he's smiling, but they're big crocodile tears. And I look at him, and I look away real quick, because I'm nervous as hell, bro. And Schultz is putting me, and he looks at Trey, and then he looks away. And Schultz's eyes start welling up, and he's like, "Trey, your dad's going to be fine. Go sit with your mom." And sends him away, and he's like, "Get in there," right? And I just remember, like, just that moment when I saw how proud he was and how scared he was. And how nervous he was, but how anxious he was. And to be able to show him, like, we all have these emotions. We all have these feelings. We got to walk to them.
Yeah.
We got to embrace them to truly live this life. It was probably one of the moments that I'll remember forever. Yeah, it was a good one.
Nice.
So,
nice.
you?
Yeah, that is a really good one. I was reflecting, and fortunately, I'm grateful to say that I have a lot of great moments in my life, and one that came to mind that was very recently, I'll share, was my last Toastmasters meeting as president in my club. And I remember looking around the room and just reflecting on, like, wow, look at the community that I helped build and inspire, and that trusted in me. I mean, people in their 30s, 40s, 50s, and 60s that looked to me as the leader of the group, the community. And we were a dying club before I joined. We had about 6 members. When I left my presidency, it was like 34. And I have to give thanks and attribute a lot of the club's success to my awesome executive board and vice president of education, a lot of people that helped me. but it was like, wow, like look at the community that we've built. And one day you got to come, man, because it really is such a special place and a special hour and a half where people come and be vulnerable
Yeah.
and share their stories. And afterwards, so many of my club members gave me so much gratitude of like, dude, you've inspired me so much. Like, thank you so much for being an awesome president. I would open every meeting with, welcome to Toastmasters Club 375, the best club on the planet. And at first, it took a while for people to receive
shifting
that.
culture.
Shifted culture.
Yeah.
And people embrace that, and they have so much confidence and believe in themselves. And it was that moment where I looked around and I knew that I had something to do with that.
Yep.
And that it was just like looking around like, holy shit, this is a powerhouse room of people. And I had a big part of helping make that happen. So that was a recent moment where I got choked up, actually. At the end, I was like, hold on. I had to take a moment because I was like, I don't want to cry in front of all these people. So I had to take a moment. But I was I was just really proud of everything we had built and what all these individual people are doing in the world. I mean, so many of these Toastmasters clubs, Toastmaster members in my club are also doing awesome things in the world.
And you said something that I hope the audience didn't miss in your story. And I made a note, and I'm like, dude, that's the ticket. What you just said is exact. If they don't get anything else out of this episode, what you just said is what they leave with. And that was, you said, I have so many great things in my life. Right? Like, think about that statement for a minute. I have so many great things in my life. That's a perspective. And people that live in greatness see greatness. Right? Like, to me, that's the most amazing thing in this whole podcast is you literally have so many great things because why? You choose to see greatness. You live in your greatness, and when you do that, you see greatness in everybody else. Even the things you don't like, the obstacles, greatness. There's a chance for me to grow to overcome this. The speech I did last week, all the things that went wrong are opportunities for me to grow to become great. And that's where I want our listeners to understand is you can live in your greatness. You can be great. It's a choice. We all are uniquely great at something. It could be your smile. It could be your kind words. It could be the story of your life, sharing that with somebody else. It could be your friendships. It could be a skill you have. You can be great. But if you don't share it, what good does it do to the world?
Amen. Amen. We have that greatness within. We got to practice and hone that skill daily to make sure we can reach our full potential greatness.
And we got to be around people that will help us.
That's huge. That's
right?
key.
That
key.
Push us to be great and pick us up when we fall. Right? Like I don't want Ali to tell me, Jared, you're great, when I know I'm not doing what I'm supposed to do. I want him to be like, hey, you dropped the ball here. You need to step up here, right? Because that helps me become great, right? Because he's holding me accountable. Accountability is a part of really becoming your best person. And part of that accountability leads us to our purposeful practice. Right? Making sure when we listen to these episodes, connect with things, and then dive in and reflect on what does it truly mean to you and how do I get this in my life?
Yeah. Well, let's hop into this purposeful practice here on exercising some more greatness. We have a few questions for purposeful practice this week. The first one is reflect on what things have you once believed or still believe you were great at, or things that people have told you you're great at. Write those down, have a list, and hopefully it matches, what you believe and what other people have told you you're great at. And then take a moment to identify your limiting beliefs and why you are limiting your greatness. And I think laying out this practice is going to be really helpful to identify the things you're great at, seeing what's limiting it, and be able to make a shift in the way you're thinking about your greatness. And hopefully what Jared and I reflected on this episode will help you take it to the next level. And then part 3, most important step, email your practice to us at onpurpose.official@gmail.com. Like we were talking about. It not only helps us reading your submissions, but it's going to help you. We're going to reply to you. We're going to reflect with you, and surrounding yourself with other people who are striving for greatness is going to make you greater.
Yeah, and speaking of surrounding yourself with other people, do not forget we're a little over a week away from the workshop, the On Purpose podcast inaugural workshop, October 19th here in Fort Collins, Colorado. It's from 8 a.m. till noon, 4 hours. You'll leave with your blueprint to creating your most purposeful life, and I bet you will do some sort of exercise similar to what we just talked about in this episode at that workshop. You can register off our social media. There's an Eventbrite link there. Click, reserve your spot. We don't have many spots left, so if you want to come get in there soon, we'd love to have you. Remember, it's the fourth quarter of 2019. We're not coasting into 2020. We're going full speed to create that best year next year, and it starts right now. So, Ollie, great episode, my friend. I'm blessed to have you here and thankful for you and all you bring to our community.
Likewise.
And team, do not forget, life is far too short to live any other way than on purpose. Thank you for being here, and we'll see you all next week.